Hello everyone. I have a small request. Please subscribe to the channel, like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've enjoyed these tales, please consider turning on the notification bell to get notified whenever a new story is released. Thank you. And now let's dive into today's story. The village of Ibokun was a place where the wind carried the scent of roasted corn and burning firewood, where the children ran barefoot through dusty paths, their laughter echoing between the mud huts. But for one boy, life was more toil than play. Daniel had known nothing but hardship. His earliest memories were of waking before the first roosters crow to fetch water from the distant stream, of carrying firewood until his shoulders ached, of hunger gnawing at his belly like a rat in a granary. His grandmother, Mama Ruth, was his only family. An old woman with hands as rough as tree bark and eyes that had seen too much, she raised him with love wrapped in discipline. "Daniel, my son," she often said as she stirred the soup over the fire, "the river does not boast of its depth, it simply carries its strength within." He would nod, though he never truly understood. All he knew was that he longed for more than the village, more than the endless days of struggle. Despite his hardships, he was different from the other boys. Where they wasted their days chasing chickens or playing by the river, Daniel trained. He ran through the fields faster than the wind. He wrestled with the strongest boys and emerged victorious. He fought with a wooden staff, mimicking the warriors he had seen from distant lands. Mama Ruth taught him things no village boy should know: how to read the stars, how to move without making a sound, how to wield a weapon with precision. "Why do I need to learn these things, Mama?" he once asked. She only smiled, her eyes sad. "Because one day you will need them." Daniel never questioned further. He only obeyed. Then came the day everything changed. One evening, as he returned from the farm, he heard whispers in the wind, voices speaking in hushed tones. Curious, he crept closer. Two men stood in the shadows near Mama Ruth's hut. Their backs were turned, but their words were clear. "The prince must never know the truth," one man muttered. "Agreed," said the other. "If he does, the Duke will kill him before he even reaches the palace." Daniel's breath caught. Prince, Duke, what were they talking about? He had no time to ask. The moment he shifted his weight, a twig snapped beneath his feet. The men turned sharply. "Who's there?" Daniel did the only thing he could. He ran, and that was when the first seeds of destiny were sown. Far beyond the dusty paths of Ibokun, in the heart of Ibadan, the grand palace stood like a lion guarding its kingdom. Within its walls lived Princess Evelyn, the jewel of the empire. Unlike other noble women, Evelyn was not one to be tamed by silk and gold. She was a tempest in human form, beautiful, strong-willed, and fearless. Many suitors came from across the land, men adorned in riches, men who carried titles, men who offered treasures beyond measure. But she rejected them all. "I do not seek a man of wealth," she told her father. "I seek a man of strength, of wisdom, a man whose soul is made of fire." King Obafemi sighed. "And where do you suppose you will find such a man?" She had no answer then, but fate had already begun to weave its threads. One day, disguised as a common trader's daughter, Evelyn left the palace. She longed to see the world beyond the walls that confined her, to know what lay in the heart of the people she would one day serve. Her journey led her to Ibokun, a village far from the luxuries of her home. It was there she saw him, a young man, bare-chested, muscles gleaming under the harsh sun, striking at a wooden post with a staff that moved like an extension of his own body. She watched, transfixed. There was something about him, something beyond his strength. He fought with purpose, with discipline. When their eyes met, something shifted in the air. "Who are you?" she asked, stepping forward. "Daniel," he replied simply. She did not reveal her true name nor her status. "I am Evelyn, a traveler." "A traveler?" he smirked. "Then you must have seen more than just this place." "I have." "Then tell me, Is there more to the world than what we see? She studied him, intrigued. He was not like the others. Most men she met sought power, wealth, or her beauty. But he sought knowledge. Yes, she said softly, there is more, and perhaps one day you will see it for yourself. Their bond was forged in that moment, a bond that would change both their fates forever. But the winds of destiny were never still, and soon the past Daniel never knew would come crashing down upon him. It was the dead of night when Mama Ruth called Daniel to her side. Her voice trembled, her hands frail. It is time you knew the truth. He frowned. What truth? She took a deep breath, then spoke the words that shattered his world. You are the son of King Obafemi, the true prince of Ibadan. Daniel laughed, a hollow sound. You jest. I do not. Her eyes burned with conviction. You were born in the palace, but stolen away when you were but a babe. The Duke sought to destroy the royal bloodline. I fled with you to this village to keep you safe. His heart pounded. It could not be true. He was just a village boy, a commoner. But deep down, something in him stirred, a forgotten memory, a feeling that had always lingered, like a part of him had never belonged in Ibokun. But why now? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Because the Duke knows you live, she said, her face grave, and he will come for you. Daniel clenched his fists. He had been raised in the dust, but he would not be trampled by fate. If he was truly a prince, then it was time he fought for his birthright. News traveled fast, and it did not take long for Duke Akintayo to hear the whispers. The prince lives? He sneered. Then he must die. He gathered his warriors, ruthless men loyal to his gold, and rode toward Ibokun. Daniel, now knowing who he was, refused to flee. He stood firm, staff in hand, waiting for the battle to come. Evelyn, no longer just an observer, stood by his side. You are more than you know, Daniel. Do not let them take what is yours. As the Duke's men stormed the village, Daniel met them with fire in his veins. He fought, not as a boy of the dust, but as a warrior born for the throne. When the dust settled, the Duke lay defeated, his power stripped away. Daniel had proven his right, and the path to the throne lay open before him. The sun rose over the great kingdom of Ibadan, casting its golden rays upon the palace walls. Within, King Obafemi sat upon his throne, his heart heavy with the years of loss. For decades he had mourned the son he thought was taken by death, never knowing that the boy had survived and grown into a warrior in the humble village of Ibokun. Word had spread like wildfire. The lost prince had been found. The people whispered the tale in every market and every courtyard. A prince raised among commoners, now a warrior who had defeated the treacherous Duke Akintayo. The city buzzed with excitement and disbelief. At the palace gates, Daniel stood, his heart pounding like the war drums of his ancestors. He had never seen such grandeur. Massive stone walls, golden banners swaying in the breeze, and guards adorned in fine armor. It was a world far from the dust and hardship of Ibokun. Beside him stood Evelyn, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She had revealed her identity to him the night before, confessing that she was not a mere traveler, but the daughter of the king. He had been shocked but not angry. It only made sense. The fire in her soul, the pride in her step. She was royalty through and through. Are you ready? She asked, her voice steady. Daniel swallowed. I must be. The palace doors opened, and before him stood King Obafemi. His beard was streaked with silver, his robes embroidered with gold, but it was his eyes that struck Daniel the most, eyes that mirrored his own. For a moment, there was silence. Then the king stepped forward, his voice trembling. My son. Daniel felt a lump rise in his throat. He had never known a father. He had never dreamed of this moment. Yet here it was, unfolding before him like a story written by the gods themselves. I do not know you, Daniel admitted, but I would like to. A tear slipped down the king's cheek, and he embraced his son, his lost prince. The court watched in awe, nobles whispering among themselves. Some were overjoyed, others wary. A prince raised in the dirt, could he rule? Would he know the ways of the court? But Daniel did not care for their whispers. He had survived famine, fought warriors, and learned strength in the harshest of ways. He was ready, or so he thought. That night, as the celebrations began, an assassin crept into his chambers. A blade glinted in the moonlight, slicing through the darkness. The assassin moved like a shadow, his feet silent against the marble floor of the palace. His mission was simple: kill the prince before he could take his rightful place. But Daniel was no ordinary prince. He had grown up in a village where the night was never safe. He had learned to sleep with one ear open, to wake at the slightest sound. So when the assassin stepped too close, Daniel's eyes snapped open. Instinct took over. He rolled off the bed just as the blade struck his pillow, tearing through fabric. Without thinking, he grabbed the wooden staff he had brought from Ibukun, his old weapon, his companion in battle. The assassin lunged again, but Daniel was faster. He blocked the strike, twisting the intruder's wrist with a swift move. The dagger clattered to the floor. "Who sent you?" Daniel growled, pressing the staff against the man's throat. The assassin struggled, his eyes filled with hatred. "You do not belong here," he spat. "A prince raised in the dirt. You will never rule." The words stung more than Daniel expected. Was this how they saw him? As an outsider, an imposter? Before he could press further, the palace guards burst in, swords drawn. The assassin was dragged away, but the warning in his words lingered in Daniel's mind. The next morning, the court was in turmoil. The nobles debated fiercely. Some supported Daniel's right to the throne, but others whispered that he was unfit, too wild, too unrefined, a mere commoner in royal robes. But the king had made his decision. "My son shall be crowned," Obafemi declared. "He is the blood of kings." Yet not all accepted it. Some had grown too comfortable under the rule of corrupt ministers, men who had profited from the absence of the rightful heir. And so, a rebellion was born. That night, the palace erupted into chaos. Armed mercenaries, hired by those who wished to see Daniel dead, stormed the halls. Flames licked the sky as the battle for the throne began. Daniel did not hesitate. He fought like a man possessed, wielding his staff as if it were a blade of iron. By his side stood Evelyn, her sword flashing in the firelight. She was no helpless princess. She was a warrior, and she fought for the man she loved. The battle raged until dawn. When the dust settled, the rebels lay defeated, their leaders captured. But the greatest victory was not in the battle. It was in the people. For when the commoners of Ibadan saw how Daniel fought, how he stood not above them, but beside them, they chanted his name. "The true king has returned." The nobles who had doubted him had no choice but to bow. The people had spoken, and so, on the seventh day, Daniel was crowned. As he sat upon the golden throne, his staff by his side as a reminder of where he had come from, he felt the weight of his new destiny. He was no longer just a boy of the dust. He was no longer just a lost prince. He was King Daniel of Ibadan, and beside him, the woman who had seen his worth long before he knew it himself, Princess Evelyn, now his queen. The winds of fate had carried him through trials and battles, but in the end he had reclaimed what was his, and the kingdom would never be the same again.